In his speech, the president also acknowledged that he had ordered the secret bombing of Cambodia 1 month after he took office in 1969. He said he did so to save the lives of American soldiers in South Vietnam, and that after the bombing began, American casualties dropped. As for the secrecy, Mr. Nixon said that congressional and government leaders had been told. And there was only the remotest reference to Watergate in the president's speech today. As for the plot against the president, there is some confusion this evening. There may be 2 cases. One involves a former New Orleans policeman named Edwin Godet. He was heard last week making a threat against the president's life. But the possible conspiracy the Secret Service talked about and worried about today appears to involve 3 or 4 other men. But neither the Secret Service nor the police in New Orleans gave details about that. And here's more on the story.
Most of the information available in New Orleans about the alleged conspiracy came from the U.S. Attorney's Office. It issued an arrest warrant for former New Orleans policeman Edwin Godet. The warrant said Godet knowingly made a threat to take the life of President Nixon. That Godet entered an establishment in New Orleans and stated somebody ought to kill President Nixon. If no one has the guts to do it, I'll do it myself. New Orleans police records show that in 1970, when President Nixon was in New Orleans, Godet burned an American flag and threw it at the president's car. For that, Godet was given a suspended sentence. Late today, however, a Secret Service spokesman said there was no known connection between the alleged conspiracy and Godet. Police say they have the identities of 4 other men who may be involved. The Secret Service says there is a 50-50 chance that some arrests will be made within the next few days. This is Stephen Schiff, WDSU News in New Orleans.
And the Secret Service said today that every year it investigates about 15,000 threats or rumors of threats against the president. It said reports of conspiracies involving more than 1 person are rare, but the reports tonight are that this one is for real and that arrest warrants will be issued soon for 4 men. Other news this evening includes Vice President Agnew. He has been the subject of conversations between the White House and several important Republican congressmen. The prime interest rate went up again today, and that means most interest rates will be going up too. And we'll have a report on how that is affecting people who want to buy homes. And David Brinkley will be with us with his journal from London. That and more in just a moment.
This computer analysis is one of the ways we test the rotary engine before we put it in a Mazda. And this is how we test the Mazda. We want to make sure the car you get is just as good as the engine that comes with it. Mazda, the only rotary engine car in America.
Test drive Mazda's incredible rotary performance at your local Mazda dealer.
I asked the gentleman, where can we go for a little peace and quiet? He says, Mr. Fields, I've got just the place. Peaceful little cottage nestled in the heart of the mellow mountains. My head, my stomach, I need some Alka-Seltzer.
When you have these upsets, Alka-Seltzer will neutralize the acid in your stomach and relieve your headache, too.
Alka-Seltzer, it's the greatest.
Vice President Spiro Agnew has offered to talk with the United States Attorney in Baltimore, but that offer may be turned down. U.S. Attorney George Bell told newsmen today that he can't say for certain whether he thinks such a private talk would be a good idea, and he hasn't made any decision yet. Agnew is under investigation in a Maryland kickback scheme involving a number of his friends and associates. Also today, government sources disclose that the White House has cautioned some key Republican congressmen against rushing publicly to the vice president's defense. One congressman who got a call was Representative John Anderson, chairman of the House Republican Conference. Anderson confirmed today that the call came from President Nixon's domestic advisor, former Defense Secretary Melvin Laird.
The substance of his message was, I think, a very balanced one. He measured his words very carefully. It was simply an effort to tell the Republicans, who are, after all, scattered around the country during this recess period, before all of the facts are known, don't make any hasty judgments, restrain any evaluation that you might be tempted to make. And this was precisely the course of conduct on which I had already determined, and so I thanked him for his advice. And that was it. I have no way of knowing what prompted the call. Mr. Laird and I are on a very friendly basis. I repeat, I can only assume that he called a number of Republicans who are now out across the country during this recess period because of his justifiable and legitimate concern that people not make any rash, precipitate judgment on the facts in the case, at least until those facts are known.
Senator Robert Griffin, Assistant Republican Minority Leader, also got a telephone call, but it was not known whether that call came from Melvin Laird. Secretary of State Rogers told a news conference today that it's wrong for government to become so obsessed with national security that it violates civil liberties. He was talking about the burglary of the office of Daniel Ellsberg, psychiatrist, and about the Watergate scandals. Ray Sherrod covered the Rogers news conference.
Secretary Rogers began by saying he did not think Watergate had weakened American foreign policy, but reporters' questions kept coming back to this. Did he think national security justified the actions of the White House plumbers?
Let me say, if you're asking me, do I think that the security considerations were sufficiently grave and serious to justify the burglary of the Ellsberg psychiatrist's office, the answer is no, I don't think so. I believe that it's very important for the United States not to become so obsessed with security matters that laws are freely violated. I think one of the things that provides security for Americans is the fact that we are a law-abiding nation. And that is a protection for all individuals and a protection for individual rights. So I think great care should be shown before any extra legal action is undertaken.
Secretary Rogers seemed to put some distance between himself and the White House today. He strongly defended Nixon foreign policy, but at the same time he was quite emphatic that what some of the men around the president had done and rationalized in terms of national security could never be so justified. Ray Sherrod, NBC News at the State Department.
Rogers also talked about Indochina. He said there will be no further talks on economic aid for North Vietnam until that country pulls its troops out of Cambodia and out of Laos.
We caught up on a lot of things, but it's getting late. We won't have any trouble falling asleep tonight.
When I first moved to the city, I sometimes had trouble falling asleep. And I'd remember Mama telling Dad, George, it's not worth losing sleep over.
That's right.
Take Somonex. It'll help make you drowsy so you can get to sleep.
Well, Somonex does help you get to sleep, right?
Right, Mama.
I learned that even without moving to the city.
Somonex. It helps take the trouble out of falling asleep.
This, believe it or not, is Smith Corona's new typewriter ribbon. It's encased in a single cartridge, so you can snap it in our new typewriter in seconds. For professional-looking results, there's a special film cartridge. And for mistakes, there's a correction ribbon cartridge. Smith Corona's new cartridge ribbon typewriters in electric portable and office models. See them now.
Several major banks today raised their prime interest rates to 9.5%. That's an all-time record charged for money lent to a bank's best customer, and it's the 14th time this year the prime rate has gone up. Other banks are expected to follow suit very quickly. The higher prime interest rates go, the higher mortgage interest rates rise, and that's making it very rough for people trying to buy homes at this time. Here's a report from California.
There are always homes for sale in Southern California, but right now they're very hard to buy. Many people cannot get home loans. Lenders just don't have much money to lend, partly because their money comes from savers who keep withdrawing it to buy high-yield government bonds. Commercial money is so tight that the interest on some home loans is topping 9%, and that's if you have good credit. Many prospective buyers are now in a bind.
Your equity and all. You've got about a $40,000 equity in your two properties. You might be able to trade, without really exchanging money. That's about the only way you can do anything in real estate right now, other than going 9.5 or 10% interest.
Even if you can afford the high interest, many lenders are requiring a stiff down payment before they will finance a home. And most lenders say they're making only half the loans they made last year. Money problems are screening out many potential purchasers.
Get him to wake you to bank, they have. Yeah.
Realtors say they're taking a beating. Even when they can find qualified buyers, a lot of people won't sell their homes because they can't afford to move. Mobility is becoming a luxury, and realtors say it's hurting people who just shouldn't be hurt.
A buyer that could have purchased a home for 35 is now looking at 30, 31, 32, because he just can't swing the payments for something that he would like to have. And it starts to get a little bit out of hand when a buyer is making $800, $900 a month and got a couple of kids and he wants to get into a home, yet he's denied the right to do just that.
Real estate people hope interest rates will drop soon, but some are afraid they'll sink into a recession before that happens. For the moment, only one thing is certain. An open house in the suburbs does not necessarily mean an open door at the loan office. Jim Upshaw, NBC News, Los Angeles.
The United Auto Workers Union said today that its members have authorized strikes, if necessary, against the big three automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. The union is negotiating new contracts with the automakers. The old ones expire in mid-September. The stock markets opened the week today with extremely light trading and falling prices. The Dow Jones Industrials were off more than 4 points. On the New York Exchange, the average price of a share dropped 26 cents. On the American Exchange, the average price of a share lost 6 cents. Thousands of firemen and volunteers continue to fight forest fires today in 5 western states, in Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Nevada, and in California. The most critical fire is in Stanislaus National Forest in Northern California, just 3 miles from Yosemite National Park. Tropical storm Brenda is in the southern half of the Gulf of Mexico and heading northwest. Brenda is expected to become a hurricane later today and reach the Mexican coast sometime tomorrow. The Skylab astronauts have been watching the storm now for several days, and today they took some more pictures of it, as Roy Neal reports.
The Skylab astronauts have been keeping close watch on Tropical Storm Brenda. Early this morning, they beamed back this television picture while flying over the east coast of Mexico.
Okay, sorry, we got it on TV now. It's a good picture. It's somewhat at a distance, but it's quite well defined from this distance, more so than it was yesterday. I think you can see the circular structure of it better today than you could from a close-up yesterday.
The astronauts also staged a demonstration for Mission Control of another way in which future astronauts may fly around in space. This is the commander, Alan Bean, floating about 20 feet above the bottom of the workshop, using a foot-controlled maneuvering unit. The foot controls operate small nitrogen jets to move him around, leaving his hands free for work. Jack Lausma helped Bean with the test.
Okay, he's made a almost 180-degree pitch maneuver now. He's looking down, facing the crew quarters edge, and he's stabilizing himself in that position. Now he's going to yaw around to his left a little bit to face the workshop hatch. Just doing kind of a
Operating the foot-controlled maneuvering unit is a little like riding a bike with no hands. Roy Neal, NBC News, Houston.
Joseph P. Kennedy III, a son of the late Senator Robert Kennedy, was convicted today of negligent driving. The charges grew out of an automobile accident on Nantucket Island a week ago. A teenage girl in the car was seriously injured. Young Kennedy was fined $100. The All-American Soapbox Derby was started 36 years ago. It's held in Akron, Ohio, and all any red-blooded American boy has to do is roll downhill faster than any other in his homemade soapbox racer. The taint of scandal has never touched the Soapbox Derby, never, that is, until now.
This is Jim Gronin, the winner of Saturday's All-American Soapbox Derby. Today, Gronin was disqualified when it was found that he had used an electromagnetic system to get an edge on the other racers. A magnet embedded in the nose of Gronin's car was activated when his helmet touched the headrest. The magnet pulled the car forward faster than normal as the steel starting plate dropped. Gronin won by a matter of inches, and the Derby officials thought the magnet made the difference. The system was hidden behind styrofoam panels, which made Derby officials suspicious. Their suspicions were confirmed when the car was x-rayed earlier today. The boy and his aunt and uncle who brought him to the race couldn't be contacted by Derby officials. It's the first time in the Derby's 36 years that a winner has been disqualified and means the other finishers will be moved up in ranking. Jim Bitterman, NBC News, Akron, Ohio.
Too heavy. Yeah. Okay.
You're hot, dry, your little throat is parched. Wet it down with Nestea, all the way down. Here comes 100% tea, ready in an instant. Crisp, clear, never cloudy. Nestea even comes already lemoned and sugared. Look out, thirst. Here comes refreshment. Take the plunge.
You're looking at a shaving system that won't shift or shimmy because the blade is locked in safe. With no exposed corners to nick you like a double-edge can. The Schick injector system. It gives you a safe, easy riding shave around tough spots like ears, noses, and Adam's apples. The Schick injector system. It's locked in safe.
In Laos, right-wing forces led by exiled Air Force General Thao Ma tried today to overthrow the government of Laos. The general and his followers slipped into Vientiane, the capital, from Thailand. The revolt was crushed, and the general was shot to death. Heavy ground fighting was reported today throughout Cambodia after a 5-day lull. Insurgent troops are advancing on 2 provincial capitals, on Kampong Speu, southwest of Phnom Penh, and on Kampong Cham, northeast of the capital. In Phnom Penh itself, there were several terrorist bomb attacks yesterday. Here by satellite is a report from Phil Brady.
Just seconds after the blast, people began spilling out of the Phnom Penh Theater in the heart of the capital. It was packed for the Sunday afternoon show, and that may be why the terrorists struck here. Among those carried out was a small boy. He was 12 years old. Moments after he was placed on the sidewalk, he died. Police say this bomb was placed under a row of seats near the rear of the theater. They weren't sure if it was a plastic charge or a grenade. First reports said 15 other Cambodians were wounded, most of them seriously. Many were soldiers. Officials think they were the real target, just as the police were in another bombing earlier in the day at the Central Market. The Central Market is the largest of its kind in Phnom Penh. During the heavy shopping hours of the early morning, thousands of people come and go here, and that's when the blast went off. When the smoke lifted and the debris settled, 2 people were wounded and 1 woman lay dead. There was yet a 3rd attack in another movie theater some distance away. Initially, 9 more were reported wounded there. The sudden rash of bombings seemed to reflect a shift in communist tactics. With their main forces now lying low, terrorists have been brought in to keep up the pressure. Their mission, say the police, is to scare the people, to create an air of panic and of total helplessness. And if they keep it up, they may do just that. Phil Brady, NBC News, Phnom Penh.
The Cost of Living Council said today that it'll hold public hearings on August 28th on proposed price increases in the automobile and steel industries. Those hearings will be held in Washington. The Ford Motor Company today recalled more than 13,000 Torinos and Rancheros. The cars were all built between June 5th and July 17th. They may have a defect in the power steering mechanism. District Attorney Jim Garrison, who once investigated the assassination of President Kennedy, went on trial himself today in New Orleans. Garrison and 2 former policemen are charged with accepting bribes from pinball gambling operators. Mine officials said today that they are still confident of reaching 2 men trapped since Friday in a copper mine near Casa Grande, Arizona. There has been no contact with the trapped men, but rescue teams hope to get to them by tomorrow morning. Municipal water systems on the Mississippi River south of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, were ordered today to close water intake systems. More than 60,000 gallons of chloroform got into the river Sunday when a barge broke up and sank 75 miles upstream from New Orleans. Gene Krupa, the famous drummer, revealed today that he suffers from what he described as benign leukemia. Krupa said that this is a type of leukemia that can be controlled with blood transfusions, but he said he gets tired easily and now performs only occasionally.
Hey, you're up early. Thought your arthritis was acting up.
Yes, but my knee doesn't feel as stiff this morning. Took 2 Bayer time-release aspirin to relieve the pain before I turned in.
Time release?
It's made to work overtime. Each tablet has twice as much Bayer aspirin, micro-encapsulated, so you only take it once in 8 hours.
Relieves minor arthritic pain, huh?
Sure helps me wake without that morning stiffness.
Get Bayer time-release aspirin. It's made to work overtime.
Sue? Sarah, I'm at the store and I'm confused. For the first time in years, I need a laxative. Sarah, there are dozens of them. Powdered laxatives, mineral oils, candy types. I'm confused.
Get the Phillips, Sue.
Why Phillips?
Phillips Milk of Magnesia is thorough and gentle. And of all those laxatives, Milk of Magnesia is the kind doctors recommend most often.
Doctors do?
Sure do.
Why American tourists should travel 3,000 miles to London to feed British pigeons is a mystery, but apparently they do. Even to feed a pigeon in London costs an American tourist more than it used to. David Brinkley's journal this evening is on what the 1973 tourist season has been like for Americans. David?
Summer is fading. The American schools opening pretty soon. And for most of the tourists scattered over Europe in a sea of drip-dry blue jeans and polyester, it's about time to go home. But some like it and some don't. This summer, the tourist has had it even a little harder than usual, with the dollar down and prices up. In Britain, a pint of beer is up to about 50 cents, outrageous. Drinks in Paris bars, $2 and up, even more outrageous. Around the streets in London, we have asked a few Americans how they made out, financially and otherwise.
Everywhere we've been, we've been very well accepted. That's a pleasant surprise. It's very crowded.
They get tired of Americans. Yeah. They'll take our money, but they don't like us too much.
Ran out of money a lot quicker than we expected. Found things didn't eat as well.
Well, we can't figure where our money has gone. We've been here just 4 weeks, you know, and it really goes fast. And we're kind of shocked because we thought it was going to be cheaper here, but so far we haven't found it, so.
I don't think the prices are extravagant as some people make them out to be. Paris is very high, but then it always was very high. I think England you can get along very nicely.
In addition, there have been the immemorial problems for tourists, how to find a place to sit down, to decide whether to tip, and if so, how much, and how to find a place for the children to go to the bathroom. Now, in late August, the London Times says the visitors have been gracious, profitable, courteous, and more than welcome. But it said we can look forward now to having the city to ourselves.
Not really, because I'll be going there in just a few days. And that's the news on this Monday evening. I'm Garrick Utley. Good night for NBC News.
Cats are smarter.
Oh, dogs are friendlier.
Cats are cleaner.
Dogs are loyal.
Dogs have itchy fleas there.
So do cats.
Not my cat. She's wearing the Heart's 90-day collar.
Really? So's my dog.
Heart's collar really works.
Oh, yes, kills fleas from nose to tail. Lasts 3 months.
You know, he's kind of cute. For a dog.
Dog and cat lovers agree. The Heart's Mountain 90-day collar is the collar that conquers the flea.
DAP, America's first name in home fix-up, makes DAP fixer products to fill your every fix-up need. Like Quick Seal, the tub fixer, for watertight seals around tub, shower, and sink. And Panel New, the paneling fixer, to clean and beautify paneling. And DAP Latex Caulk, the smooth-flowing caulk fixer that stops air and water leaks. When you need to fix something inside or outside your house, remember America's first name in home fix-up, DAP.
NBC Nightly News has been brought to you by DAP, America's first name in home fix-up products, designed to solve hundreds of home fix-up problems.
Come and see Lots of Luck. Tom DeLuise needs it, deserves it, but somehow never quite gets his share in a brassy new series coming this fall.
Come and see NBC Saturday.
You know Sizzler for a great...
Newsroom at 11, TV8 San Diego.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather with the presidential party in California, Fred Graham in Washington, and Bill Walker in Arroyo Hondo, New Mexico.
Good evening. At San Clemente today, on the lawn of the Western White House, President Nixon finally met with the press for a no-holds-barred questioning about Watergate. The president began his first news conference in more than 5 months with an announcement of the resignation of Secretary of State William Rogers and the choice of Henry Kissinger to succeed him. But the first and almost every question thereafter dealt with the scandal that has so stained his administration. And Mr. Nixon, by turns conciliatory, matter-of-fact, and belligerent, met them head-on for some 45 minutes. The very first question concerned the White House tapes of Watergate conversations, why they were recorded, and what did the president think about a poll showing public disapproval of them being made.
I think that on this kind of a basis.
Secretary of State Rogers will leave his post September 3rd and return to the practice of law in New York and Washington. He's an old friend of the president, campaigned with him in 1952. Mr. Nixon said that he still hoped to turn to Rogers for advice. Rogers, the president added, has been a major architect of, quote, one of the most successful eras of foreign policy of any administration. The president also urged quick Senate confirmation of Kissinger and said that he would continue to serve as White House foreign policy advisor as well as secretary. We'll have more on the president's news conference later in this broadcast, and CBS will present a special report on the news conference tonight at 9 Eastern Time. It will include all of Mr. Nixon's comments about Watergate.
Beautiful wood just makes this room. Believe me, it hasn't always looked like this. I tried covering it up with wax, and then I discovered Scott's Liquid Gold. Liquid Gold cleaned and conditioned the wood, brought out the color and contrast. It penetrated the wood, and that dry, faded look seemed to disappear, as well as scratches. A nice thing about Liquid Gold is it doesn't attract dust. It makes my job a lot easier. After seeing what Liquid Gold can do, use it weekly, and keep it that way. And there's the large size for the big jobs.
Cats are smarter.
Oh, dogs are friendlier.
Cats are cleaner.
Dogs are loyal.
Dogs have itchy fleas there.
So do cats.
Not my cat. He's wearing the Heart's 90-day collar.
Really? So's my dog.
Heart's collar really works.
Oh, yes, kills fleas from nose to tail. Lasts 3 months.
You know, he's kind of cute. For a dog.
Dog and cat lovers agree. The Hart's Mountain 90-day collar is the collar that conquers the flea.
Shortly before the president in San Clemente began fielding reporters' questions about the White House tapes, his lawyer went into federal court in Washington to defend the refusal to make them public. Fred Graham reports.
Judge Sirica's packed courtroom crackled with tension as Charles Allen Wright rose to defend President Nixon. Wright said only a president can decide which presidential papers should be made public. And he said this principle of confidentiality is more important than getting to the bottom of Watergate. The prosecution table stared intently as Wright disclosed that one tape contained security information so sensitive that Mr. Nixon would not even tell Wright about it, and that the president does not claim the authority to dismiss the case to avoid turning over the tapes. Replied Archibald Cox, the special prosecutor, no man should be the judge in his own case. He said under our system, the president is not above the law, and courts can order him to turn over needed evidence. Judge Sirica questioned Wright. Sirica, if a president had evidence against a friend who was accused of murder, could a court subpoena it? Right. A court would lack the power. Sirica, is there not a potential for grave abuse? Right. The president may be impeached. That is the remedy if he abuses his power. Outside, Cox was asked, what if he doesn't get the tapes?
I would assume the grand jury would wish to continue its investigations. Just how they would be affected, I couldn't say, no.
Judge Sirica said he will try to issue his decision within a week. But however that ruling goes, it is certain to be only a footnote to a Supreme Court decision that will ultimately settle the issue, probably this fall. Fred Graham, CBS News, at the Federal District Courthouse in Washington.
At his news conference, President Nixon made his first public comment about the troubles facing his vice president. The bribery and kickback investigation has not shaken his confidence in Agnew, the president said, and he spoke of Agnew's courage and performance in facing the situation. Mr. Nixon calling it totally inappropriate to refuse to comment on the prospect of an Agnew resignation if he's indicted. In a separate case in Maryland, a county grand jury has indicted the committee which organized a salute to Ted Agnew dinner last year. The indictment charges failure to report a $50,000 loan of Nixon campaign funds, which made the dinner appear more successful than it was. Also in Maryland, a conservative Republican, Robert Bowman, has won a special congressional election, the first since the Watergate hearings began, and therefore being watched as a clue to voter reaction to the scandal. Only about a fourth of the voters turned out, and Bowman won with just over 51% of the ballots. He called his victory a repudiation of the idea that Watergate means disaster for Republicans.
Take two.
Alka-Seltzer. It's the greatest.
The Cost of Living Council today proposed new regulations for food prices that go into effect with Phase 4 after September 12th. The regulations are complex and are expected to result in price increases. But Council Director John Dunlop said the increases should not be as sharp as those that came after the price freeze was lifted last month. The council said a substantial portion of the increases would be absorbed by the wholesaler and retailer instead of the consumer. The Dow Jones Industrials dropped almost 6 points on the New York Stock Exchange. Volume was 10,800,000 shares. The average price per share lost 15 cents on the New York Exchange, 6 cents on the American. The manhunt in New Mexico for a former New Orleans policeman accused of threatening the president came to a peaceful end today. Edwin Godet surrendered. Bill Walker reports.
The siege, which started with an exchange of gunfire between Godet and officers trying to arrest him, ended peacefully on a dusty mountain road near Taos. After more than 20 hours of continuous negotiations in the wilderness, while the Secret Service and police called off their search, the former New Orleans policeman drove up to a roadblock and turned himself in. Godet was accompanied by his wife Judy and a cousin Stanley Godet, who arranged the surrender. He was unarmed. Godet, bearded and long-haired, refused to discuss charges as he had threatened President Nixon's life. Godet was hustled into a waiting Secret Service car and driven to Albuquerque, where he was arraigned late this afternoon. Bill Walker, CBS News, Aurora Hondo, New Mexico.
In Cambodia, U.S. Ambassador Emery Swank has signed an agreement to help rebuild the Neek Long Hospital destroyed by a U.S. B-52 2 weeks ago. Swank conceded the town suffered grievously at American hands and said relatives of the more than 100 persons killed in the attack will be given money. Truck drivers in Chile said today their 4-week-old strike is near settlement, and with that the word came of a decline in tension and accompanying unruly demonstrations like the one in Santiago yesterday that led to bloodshed. There were, however, minor incidents. Firebombs were hurled at several stores and at the North Korean embassy. There was some damage, but no injuries. At the World University Games in Moscow today, the United States won a basketball game and lost a fight. They beat the Cubans, but with 90 seconds to go, the Cubans charged the American players, and in the resulting free-for-all, fists, feet, chairs, and glass bottles flew. There apparently were no serious injuries, though. The dumbfounded Russian spectators had been sympathetic to the Cuban team before the fight, but afterward they chanted, United States, yes, Cuba, no.
I'm Fred Wilkinson for Exxon. Strangely enough, I'm traveling at 70 miles an hour, but my car is standing still. Here at Exxon's laboratories, where research goes on rain or shine, this car is running on a dynamometer to demonstrate for us how much gasoline is saved by driving slower. At 70 miles an hour, this 20-gallon tank of gasoline lasted for 253 miles. Next, the tank was refilled. But this time, the car was driven at 50 miles an hour. When 253 miles were reached, the car was stopped. And see, by cutting its speed from 70 to 50 miles per hour, this particular car saved 4 gallons. It's a good idea for all of us to join the efficiency drive. When you adopt more efficient ways of driving, like cutting down your speed, you'll find your gasoline dollars will go a lot farther. Exxon believes, together we can help keep things moving.
I've got a birthday present for every girl who doesn't want to be reminded of her birthday. The undercup support panels in this new Cross Your Heart bra. Undercup support panels for a little more support at a time when a little more support may be just what you need. My new Cross Your Heart bra. It lifts and separates. And now it has undercup support panels to help cross years off my figure. See? The new Cross Your Heart bra from Playtex.
The 20 cents a slice heartburn. The $12 plus parts sour stomach. The 15 cents a cup indigestion.
The priceless stomach acid quencher, Rolaids, the medicine in a roll that consumes 47 times its weight in excess stomach acid. Take the excess stomach acid quencher, Rolaids, now also in spearmint.
Probably never has a president faced such tough questions in a news conference as those directed at Mr. Nixon today. Questions about resignation and impeachment.
What was authorized was a 1970 plan which, by your own description, permitted illegal acts, illegal breaking and entering, mail surveillance, and the like. Now, under the Constitution, you swore an oath to execute the laws of the United States faithfully. If you were serving in Congress, would you not be considering impeachment proceedings and discussing impeachment possibility against an elected public official who had violated his oath of office?
I would if I had violated the oath of office. I would also, however, refer you to the recent decision of a Supreme Court, or at least an opinion even last year, which indicates inherent power in the presidency to protect the national security in cases like this. I should also point to you that in the 3 Kennedy years and the 3 Johnson years through 1966, when burglarizing of this type did take place, when it was authorized on a very large scale, there was no talk of impeachment, and it was quite well known. I shall also point out that when you ladies and gentlemen indicate your great interest in wiretaps, and I understand that the height of the wiretaps was when Robert Kennedy was Attorney General in 1963. I don't criticize it, however.
You know, at any time during the Watergate crisis, did you ever consider resigning? And would you consider resigning if you felt that your capacity to govern had been seriously weakened? And in that connection, how much do you think your capacity to govern has been weakened?
The answer to the first 2 questions is no. The answer to the third question is that it is true that as far as the capacity to govern is concerned, that to be under a constant barrage, 12 to 15 minutes a night on each of the 3 major networks for 4 months tends to raise some questions in the people's mind with regard to the president, and it may raise some questions with regard to the capacity to govern. But I also know this. I was elected to do a job. Watergate is an episode that I deeply deplore, and had I been running the campaign rather than trying to run the country, and particularly the foreign policy of this country this time, it would never have happened. But that's water under the bridge. It's gone now. The point that I make now is that we are proceeding as best we know how to get all those guilty brought to justice in Watergate. But now we must move on from Watergate to the business of the people.
Nicholas Katzenbach, who was Assistant Attorney General under President Kennedy and Attorney General under Johnson, says he knows nothing of any burglary or similar activity cited by Mr. Nixon. And said Katzenbach, I think we're entitled to know what he's talking about. CBS News White House correspondent Dan Rather attended the President's news conference, and here is his analysis.
His mood, combative. The tone, the style, defiant. Appearance, nervous. Up close and in person, that nervousness conveyed through the cracks and hitches in his voice, by the twitch that has developed in his cheeks and jaw. That is not to say he doesn't handle news conferences well. He showed again today that he does. In many ways, this was a masterful performance. He managed to attack while convincing his audience that he was being attacked. In what he said and how he said it, he exhibited with renewed vigor many of the old hostilities and grudges for which he has long been noted, toward Congress, Democrats, especially the Kennedys, toward the press. He wanted to come across as a fighter, and did. He also wanted to come across as candid and did. Perhaps his performance won't strike most people as being as straightforward and candid as that of Vice President Agnew in Mr. Agnew's recent pressure-packed news conference. But still, Mr. Nixon did take Watergate questions. Many people believed beforehand that he might not. And he gave the appearance, at least, of dealing with those questions directly and in detail. In so doing, he probably helped himself. It will be surprising now if his low standing in public opinion polls doesn't rise at least a little. In short, he is likely to receive nationwide high marks. Number one, for finally facing questioners man to man, and number two, for the overall impression he made doing it. That is not to say he did answer all questions, because he didn't. For example, he still hasn't explained fully why, when Patrick Gray told him in July of last year that some top aides were trying to mortally wound him, he didn't ask who. He still hasn't explained how it is that he says he ordered Attorney General Richard Kleindienst and Assistant Attorney General Henry Peterson to make investigations, when they say no such investigations were ordered. And he has shifted ground now in calling the break-in at the office of Daniel Ellsberg's psychiatrist flatly illegal and deplorable. The president today again indicated he sees nothing wrong in having misled Americans for 14 months about heavy bombing in Cambodia. That and Watergate itself, he said, should be considered water under the bridge. And again he said that in the manner of being in a fighting mood. Among the questions remaining to be answered are whether the American people are ready to consider Watergate and related crimes just water under the bridge, and whether a fighter can also be a healer.
And that's the way it is. Wednesday, August 22nd, 1973. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
When I'm at a party... Don Adams, Monty Hall, Rich Little, watch it all and wait till your father gets home.
New Father shows begin Wednesday, September 12 on Channel 4.
In the Los Angeles region, the hot brand is Dodge. The Charger is one reason Dodge sales are up 28%. See why at your local Dodge dealers.
World University games from Moscow, 7:30 tonight.
This is NBC Nightly News, Wednesday, August 22nd, with John Chancellor. Tonight, reported by Garrick Utley.
Good evening. President Nixon held a news conference today, his first one in more than 5 months. Mr. Nixon started by naming Henry Kissinger to be the new Secretary of State, replacing William Rogers, who resigned. But after that, the questions went quickly to Watergate. This was the first time the president has answered questions about Watergate in person since the scandal erupted with full force. It was an especially important news conference for Mr. Nixon. It was another determined effort to put Watergate behind him. And that was evident when he was asked to what extent Watergate has affected his ability to lead the nation.
It is true that as far as the capacity to govern is concerned, that to be under a constant barrage, 12 to 15 minutes a night on each of the 3 major networks for 4 months tends to raise some questions in the people's mind with regard to the president. And it may raise some questions with regard to the capacity to govern. But I also know this. I was elected to do a job. Watergate is an episode that I deeply deplore. And had I been running the campaign rather than trying to run the country, and particularly the foreign policy of this country this time, it would never have happened. But that's water under the bridge. It's gone now. The point that I make now is that we are proceeding as best we know how to get all those guilty brought to justice in Watergate. But now we must move on from Watergate to the business of the people. And the business of the people is continuing with the initiatives we began the first administration. Just a moment. We've had 30 minutes of this press conference. I have yet to have, for example, one question on the business of the people, which shows you how we're consumed with. I'm not criticizing the members of the press, because you naturally are very interested in this issue. But let me tell you, years from now, people are going to perhaps be interested in what happened in terms of the efforts of the United States to build a structure of peace in the world. They are perhaps going to be interested in the efforts of this administration to have a kind of prosperity that we haven't had since 1955. That is, prosperity without war and without inflation. Because throughout the Kennedy years and throughout the Johnson years, whatever prosperity we had was at the cost of either inflation or war or both. I don't say that critically of them. I'm simply saying we've got to do better than that. Now, our goal is to move forward then, to move forward to build a structure of peace. And when you say, do I consider resigning? The answer is no, I shall not resign. I have 3.5 years to go, or almost 3.5 years, and I'm going to use every day of those 3.5 years trying to get the people of the United States to recognize that whatever mistakes we have made, that in the long run, this administration, by making this world safer for their children, and this administration, by making their lives better at home for themselves and their children, deserves high marks rather than low marks. Now, whether I succeed or not, we can judge then.
The president was asked some unusually tough questions today, questions about specific points in the Watergate case, and we'll hear his answers. Questions about Vice President Agnew, who's under investigation in Maryland, and questions about his authorizing secret bombing in Cambodia. That and more in a moment.
Life's been good to us. Most of all...
The first questions President Nixon faced today were about Watergate, and they came hard and fast. One question was about a phone conversation Mr. Nixon had with L. Patrick Gray, then the acting director of the FBI. Gray testified at the Senate Watergate hearings that he had told the president there were people in the White House who were trying to mortally wound him. Here is Mr. Nixon's response to that.
Whether the term was used as mortally wounded or not, I do not know. Some believe that it was, some believe that it wasn't. That's irrelevant. He could have said that. The main point was, however, I asked him whether or not he had discussed this matter with General Walters, because I knew that there had been meetings between General Walters, representing the CIA, to be sure that the CIA did not become involved in the investigation, and between the director of the FBI. He said that he had. He told me that General Walters agreed that the investigation should be pursued. And I told
At one point today, the questioning turned to the question of just how hard the president had tried to get all the facts about Watergate. He was reminded that John Mitchell, his former attorney general and campaign director, had told the Senate committee that the president had never asked Mr. Mitchell what he knew, nor did he tell Mr. Nixon anything. Mitchell said that had the president asked, Mitchell would have given him, as he put it, chapter and verse on Watergate.
I will only say that throughout the stack, just as I did at Ziegler the other day.
That reference was to the president's New Orleans trip on Monday when he shoved Press Secretary Ron Ziegler and told him to route the press through another door at the convention hall there. The questioning turned to John Dean's account of executive clemency and money for the Watergate conspirators. Dean said the president authorized both. Mr. Nixon denied both strenuously. Another topic was the presidential tapes, tapes which the president will not give up either to the Senate committee or Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox. A reporter asked Mr. Nixon then why he did let his former chief of staff, H.R. Haldeman, listen to a tape after being told Haldeman might be indicted.
I make it myself. As far as their defense is concerned, their lawyers demonstrated very well before the committee that he can handle it very well without any assistance from me.
Earlier, the president's lawyer, Charles Allen Wright, and Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox went to federal court in Washington to argue the question of release of the tapes. Carl Stern covered that story.
Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox brought his wife along for the historic argument. So, too, did Charles Allen Wright, the University of Texas law professor, hired as one of 10 White House lawyers now defending the president. Wright argued that forced turnover of the White House tapes would be a frightening prospect, opening the president's privacy to all sorts of invasions. But Chief Judge John Sirica capped 20 minutes of tough questioning by asking how else is the Watergate grand jury to get all the truth. Said Wright, that's the president's decision to make. Only the president can decide when such information should be given, how much, and to whom. When Sirica shot back that seemed contrary to the spirit of checks and balances, the White House lawyer told him that there is no check for alleged presidential abuses except impeachment. Prosecutor Cox then joined the battle by urging that whatever rights the president had were lost when White House conversations were poisoned by criminality, and his words grew stronger. As presidential lawyers, including Leonard Garment and Fred Bazart, listened, Cox said the integrity of the Oval Office had been subject to corruption and rot. And he argued that by giving up the tapes in this unique criminal prosecution, the president would not lose any of his power to keep proper and legal White House business confidential.
Mr. Wright, can you tell us a little bit about your argument?
Afterwards, the White House lawyers declined to answer questions. They were told by Judge Sirica he'd have a decision within 1 week. Whichever way he rules, both sides will be back on appeal, ending in the Supreme Court, so today's session was only a warm-up. Carl Stern, NBC News, Washington.
At today's news conference, the president covered a number of other topics: the appointment of a new Secretary of State, Vice President Agnew, and the secret bombing of Cambodia. We'll be back with that in a moment.
Welcome to Independence Hall. You're now standing in the most historic room in the United States. This is the room where the country was born.
In 1792, just 16 years after our country's birth, Insurance Company of North America was born in this very same place, conceived by the same kind of men who sat here in 1776. To them, an insurance policy wasn't just a piece of paper full of legal promises. It was a commitment to band together to meet the needs of a new country and its people, to give people someone to turn to, which was the kind of idea men had in mind when they founded this country. Since that time, that commitment, that attitude has remained constant at INA, a feeling that their business is not just selling insurance, but providing someone to turn to. Insurance Company of North America, where an insurance policy is more than just a piece of paper since 1792.
When he's tense. The president was obviously in a defiant mood as well. He was expecting the tough questions he got, and he was prepared with tough answers. Mr. Nixon was clearly in command here today, as a president can always be in this presidential news conference format. Richard Valeriani, NBC News at the Western White House.
The president called his news conference mainly to answer questions about Watergate. He hopes it's the last time he'll have to do that. Whether it is will depend on whether people were satisfied with the answers they heard today. And today, some of the members of the Senate Watergate Committee said they were not. One of them was the chairman, Sam Ervin.
The way you can get to determine the truth of any man's assertion, be he a president or a prince or a peasant, is for him to make his assertions under circumstances where he is subject to cross-examination. That's been the experience of the Anglo-Saxon race in the administration of justice for many centuries.
Do you still hope to meet with the president, Senator?
Well, I think the president's made it very clear that he's not going to divulge any information beyond these generalities in respect to the matter the committee's investigating.
Is that going to make it more difficult to know the real truth about Watergate?
Yes, because I think that the Senate Select Committee has asked for only 4 tapes. The tape of September the 15th, 1972, and the tape of February the 28th, 1973, and tapes of March the 13th and 21 of 1973. These were the tapes which recorded the conversations between the president and John Dean. They are the best evidence of what was said in those conversations, and they would enable the committee to determine whether John Dean told the truth or whether John Dean committed perjury before the committee. And I think it's a great disservice to the committee and a great disservice to the American people for the president not to release these tapes.
Tonight, NBC News will present a special 1-hour report on the president's news conference, including the entire news conference itself. We'll begin at 10 this evening, 9 Central Time.
Ted and I just can't seem to get together. So I got this, $40 an ounce. Nice, but don't forget the close-up. I used to, thanks. I'll buy a wig, too. Gail, put your money where your mouth is. Whiter teeth and fresh breath will bring Ted closer. This red stuff will whiten my teeth. Makes my teeth their whitest. And has a real mouthwash. Try it. Did you get together last night? Did we ever?
Put your money where your mouth is. Buy Close-Up.
There are lots of insecticides to kill germ-carrying flies and annoying mosquitoes, but this one helps protect my family for up to 4 full months. The Shell No Pest Strip. When I use it as directed, I can hang it in my living room, bedrooms, playroom. And what I like best is that I can hang or place it so it's well out of reach of my children while it's working.
Shell No Pest Strips help protect your family from flies and mosquitoes up to 4 full months.
The Cost of Living Council laid down the rules today for food prices during the remainder of Phase 4. The rules will permit companies to pass along to consumers the cost of such items as labor and overhead. Those rules go into effect on September 12th, the day the beef price freeze ends. Negotiators for the United Auto Workers Union went back to the bargaining table today with the Chrysler Corporation. They seemed to be in a good mood, and one union leader said they hope to reach a new contract without a strike. The UAW has singled out Chrysler as a strike target if no agreement is reached by September.